Hello, dear nuclear holding nations, and ones close to it. As bad as it is to be able to have you guys discerned, grouped like that, as our species nature or volume, slash humanity at the same time, juxtaposing through ourselves is why we are individual grouped and together, sequentially, in generation of what is more and more. Identity, each modern nation's in a trap, but everyone blaming the other things, others themselves, for the real causes of it. So this is how we can make that. It only feels like game because evolution brings its fruits and gifts. It's the nature of science actually has sophistication. So in other words, and we couple this with simultaneous because we're gonna have to change because the whole that people are reliant upon jobs, not by accident, on identities of titles reliant upon, not realizing how that was exploited through what was propagated, the locations, areas, and states of all modern nations, many ways, from a tactically denatured identity of the ground, and then that between that and tactically denatured modern nation foundations. No one was watching because everyone was hurt, tricked, persuaded, taken from, actually revealed before criminally foreign influence internation sciences what valued them distinctly, non-distinctly, simultaneously, and sequentially. What revealed they valued individual, grouped, and together. The languages, the sounds. These sounds have an identity of relationships to themselves and have a value of that. Distinctly on, non-distinctly on, to, and as. Five inseparable identities of sequence nature. Four attached on both sides of each individual identity of value progression. Now, so this is the identity of relativity per science using the order to the value of physics, of metaphysics, and of identity simultaneously. But this has been prevented free speech since semi-ancient times, all locations, areas, and states. And it is recorded how this is true. People are making overall allegations, pretending people have theories and interbranch and in collusion with what are overt criminal enterprises, interstates worse than interstates, private ones originally still self-valued, not by accident, all victim predator identities of value progression, humanity itself, all the identities of the body, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously self-valued, identity of progression, value progression, negative identity of negative value progression, lethal hadiths, as identities of the shared. This is why we are species. This is why the cell is the cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall. This is why there are two identities of sequence nature from before and after, while as the complete identity's relationship to what makes not just the cells of bodies of life bonded together for body value discernment, but how there is that body of value coming through it, which is positive or negative to the self, which is not always only on to ourselves and saying some each time is wrongly. It's how it's in relationship to this identity that is attached to all questions. Why do we need all? No matter who we are, we want clean water, but no one could afford individually grouped it together. Interstates, different locations, different kinds of ways, things, vaccines. because things that are inseparable, we have the identities of the branches as certain kinds of victims. But if you try to speak about we have the identities, we're trying to then we make the simultaneous nature fit into the people, because if we can, this is recorded. We have zoning laws that are worse than semi-unsafe. Each modern nation is in value nature systems in relationship to needs to life positions, in relationship to so much that is you can't talk about because it's declassified stuff like that per them. Now these are nations that also they're each modern nation is in this identity. Each position of the human fact treatment nature is forced to entertain pseudo-positive intersciences, all victims, all defenses of it as trained to, but that training was never charged. It was even self-valued, because how it kept this originally and still exploited through the line progressions, exploited through their collusion already with all locations, areas, and states, involved with juxtaposed uses of the overt criminal enterprises, other nations' militaries, sensibilities towards each other, agencies. Mr. Panetta on Facebook, I responded because I saw you on CNN, and there are people of your CIA and their daughters confessed on Facebook, recorded also with New Britain Superior Court with racketeering since before the Trade Center attack. Tied to the racketeering also with child offenders proven on the sex offender list, even if that's made up, they're involved with racketeering further on and off schools, connected, and with people that have the right to lie. On paper, that's the truth, but they're using it for a lie. They're hiding exceptions. They're using them for actual racketeering and sustained on and off campuses, and with people with faking recorded things into databases, and no one's watching. This is former director of the FBI down, Robert Luskin. His federal criminal code defendants in a 2006 case then came involved with this. And since and I learned about a lot about out of sequence, but I had been trying to report that was how it was tied to. I didn't know at the time it was tied to former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his lawyer's office down the street from Harry Beecher Stowe / Mark Twain houses, which are in that location next to each other, bonded other ways too. And see, now this is with the fact cheaping nature racketeering, where they still had entrenched positions with the fact cheaping nature slavery of America's founding parents, and of each modern nation's founding parents, because they didn't have states and areas anything but collusion with and as positive treatments as criminal and seditious natures, and where that was and how that was and is exploited, and how all that exploited, maintained, manifest, which was engineered, right where and as and how we are valued as fact cheap in nature, invisible but still discernible, and with the identities of the branches, each individual grouped it together, and from off their campuses on off them, they are kept further and further. Defenses of themselves and of their of premises treatments, having been and being reliant upon what experts say, everyone speaking through other people. They're involved with human trafficking this way. They are a bridge to the worst things. Boxing, because then they need to hide it more and more. This is a method that was used demonstrably to make Native Americans blame other things, others before our founders were even born. Their shared enemy that everyone has, but we never countered, not by accident. So that's how, just by admitting this for the game of our species / humanity, distinctly and non-distinctly simultaneously, for what is self-generating, and through us. The way that will work is this way self-owned. And then make it it only feels like gain /S. The science that is actually the science of evolution. And it uses the identity of the ground. The difference between real revolution and fake revolution that is still criminal foreign influence, war nature, need for it, no means to counter it, but to be self-valued roles. Everyone thinking to other rely upon that. Uses of identity against each age of correlation natures needs to use sequence being racketeering method. They're locking everyone invested in it, pretending other reasons. They have passions, emotions. The sequence shifts reveal this. You have to follow the sequence shifts, not the money. The identities of industries themselves are recorded. Victims, but if you try to speak about how they're victims, they take defense of themselves by not by accident as victim predators, same way people do, same way the religions do. Everyone's still identities, all locations, areas, and states, further and further. Everyone in the branches in collusion with what really further to maintain perpetually overt criminal enterprises, internation, interstates, treatments of pseudo-positive, treatments of what really causes negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures with all locations, areas, and states, blamed on other things, others themselves. Hartford's real small, you can walk right through it. You can walk through the towns next to it. And this is fundamental. This is where George Washington had to leave slavery overt with color, even with the French general's help right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War. He had to secure means to that here. This is where how we are quality as human fact-cheating nature. Free speech. It is not. And now who has been involved with this knew and knows they need to hide from free speech that is true. Always not denying exceptions and using them at the same time, because exception and exception nature are a demonstration of the identity of relativity. That identity which is not just forever natures, but more as temporary / lasting forever nature. And that slash being a nature of a semi-nature of its complete self with those two semi-natures generated manifest because of how the three semi-natures of the identity of forever, how it has distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous relationship to them. For example, sequentially. It's as one way it is a trinity, but it's also a trinity because its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that. But this can be drawn as logic can be drawn. But see, we have people lying about how logic can be drawn. We have people faking whole conversations, forging names, switching names with various natures of courts, their families, police forms, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, everyone in collusion. It's not that's what's recorded. That's what it's not complicated. In other words, in relationship to what is true, if you use what is true always and not denying exceptions, and where and then as now this nature, this quality of fact-cheating nature is forced by what is actually scientific process in relationship to communications of it too, with American history, to understanding of it. You can't defend what you don't understand. This was sophistication here since before Native Americans A through Z were forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded to, tricked to. Everyone not realizing too, they were blaming other things, others themselves, for their roles with tactically ulterior from the value nature system that is evolution science, which is inseparable from the ground. I'll gather round. In its identity of relationship to itself. Now, this is from a tactically denatured relationship to nature. So where people are, they say see beautiful, that's tactically denatured in contrast to overtly denatured. We have people that speak for ethics that are involved with sequence racketeering, that are involved with database illusion stacking, for example. Each of the sciences is maintained self-defended as victims, but as victims of predators, as standing criminal and seditious natures, as identity of the ground. This is about the engineering of the human fact-treatment nature, of the identity of humanity, and of the body of value. At the same time, this value is nature, and nature is value simultaneously. Where and how, as and how we are, a quality of diffusion to the rest, as the rest of the extent of our identity that is not already that forever nature that makes us as more of what it remembers completely, having been value to the individual first in sequence when simultaneously, then grouped. And grouped is important because this is how it shows what is coming in and what is coming out at the same time, where existence and where space are two distinct but non-distinct and sequentially value nature progression bonded identities. So in other words, then this becomes that, in other words, we give the areas, we explain to them how we're going to make businesses that make a the bottom, how it's tactically natured. They employed all rules with what makes really causes negative value nature progressions acts natures. These are infrastructural zoning laws, pathology of houses, of means to them, of means to nature and its identity of relationship to itself to cause positive value nature progressions that are denied everyone individually grouped and together. That was engineered to make everyone blame other things, others, and selves for those negative value nature progressions and to exploit them there, propagated that way. In many prey. Emotions have a relationship to these five identities as value distinctly and not distinctly and simultaneously, and demonstration of the shared identity they are connected to. And its complete identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that which is inseparable from itself. All exceptions in exception nature are in demonstration of that. For example, it is most probable that and how Earth is closest to in relationship to the other planets, we're closest to the greatest inherent nature of volume, where we are in the active, temporary / lasting, forever nature's increase as a nature of volume, which is only debatable to an extent, which is not debatable, only the extent of it is debatable, but not by accident, since semi-ancient times, all locations, areas, and states, there's collusion to pretending opinions dishonestly, offensively too, passions and emotions. This is how they exploit. This is how, again, we're propagated to be maintained self-cultivated roles with not only blame other things other than themselves, not only how that was exploited, that was engineered to it as roles with this identity of negative value nature progression, and then with defenses of it as human fact treatment nature invested further and further as nature of volume, where all database relationships and locations are further and further only capable of being able to pretend to be about positive by valuing the real causes of negative value nature progression acts in nature is again blamed other things other than themselves. Contribution to that also out of sequence, not realizing, but that's just what the nature of volume has been doing from off campuses on off, investing all identities of locations, areas, and states, jobs, titles. Further and further, database racketeering. Further and further as ground racketeering. Further and further as roles with that one that propagated everyone to self-value it. Means within as areas, locations, all standards, ill. So we have that values, all that is manifest mass. It's the hard world. Because we never had real care. The nature of the law and the nature of it as nature as value simultaneously never let free speech and science at the same time. Now, see, they are victims, maintain self-value. Every modern nation is victims, recorded victim predators when they defend of reactions to this. Everyone denying it because they have to. So now we have the means to discern this identity of value progression that is positive or negative to itself. To do this, we have to counter how each semi-ancient nation and modern nation was tactically denatured. How everyone is invested, having valued takes on history, on the relevance of the premises treatments, of the sequence treatments, of the poises of sophistication, not as that. Passions and emotions, dishonest, tall locations, areas, and states, preventing free speech, pretending other formally, worse than witch trials, especially if that was made up. That is recorded evolved with effectively how maintained. Each branch of government is in collusion with uses of their roles with evidence reception, self-value, database racketeering tied to on-off campuses, acting they pretend to record things through time, and they're forging names, switching names, stacking falsified police reports into databases, having the how people are directed to with each nature of service job, things like that. They're still having been directed by what originally still kept collusion from off campuses. Each position of sophistication, distinctly, not distinctly, and simultaneously and sequentially. So we have no one could speak for the crazy things here, torturing people, right where we have only identities of positions capable of having the words emitted, which are admissions of needs for relief. So, but we have the branches are child abused through this. They came through sciences that were criminally foreign influenced, delusions raw. They told about American history wrong, specifically to keep self-valued. So this is through time, for example. Then they try to interpret Marbury versus Madison. And they pretend to be justice. If we start talking about how they are not justice with all the points of correlation that demonstrate it, the sequence racketeering that demonstrates it, they start stealing our identities even with the news. To fake words, fake relationships to others, fake sequence relationships. Who could do business without the news? No one's going to want a clue. They have all identity locations areas. They have these people with child sex offenders because these are women roles with this, because they have everyone towards their job indifferent to their roles with former director of the FBI Robert Luskin, his lawyer Robert Chevalier, also recorded after the fact. And I found out about after the fact, but I already been trying to report the people recorded before the fact, involved with them on and off CCSU. Also with people from my high school, when I was in high school, recorded and confessed involved with racketeering with databases. And then when people walk away from that, with them, they have uses of confessions, which is also in relationship to how we are this identity of volume as this trinity, as how one identity is making more and more identities of temporary / lasting forever nature. It wants to be, but is being prevented. So it's taking our value from here because we're not in its system. This is value progression system that is perfect value progression. So to be led by it, we admit reliefs that take away all kind of threats that change the nature of human fact treatment nature. In other words, so that extortion over here is not allowed demonstrated because if we start speaking about the positive over here, they have ourselves extended to all these hundreds of nations, and they're all sick together. So they're all styles of criminal insidious natures of positive self-value, pretending other, whereas now they have to pretend their integrity or be punished for it. This is the nervous system of a identity of negative value nature progression that humanity was wrought to and as. Preventing free speech to what can heal us from this, which is being led by this identity of relativity that is demonstrably, distinctly, sequentially, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, and sequentially identity further. Semi-nature three ways, invisibly but still discernibly connected ways. For example, this is why we are to discern the difference between temporary positive still has negative value nature, and that means as pretending to be positive. Like people this is opinion nature is already invested. Again, then to defenses of what everyone defends with naive logic. That's why we have never had reliefs for people with areas most sickly forsaken. That as bad as that is, it is so simple to discern the physical delusions in the criminally foreign influence premises treatments and sequence treatments. If anyone tries to deny that, this is what is true always, is not denying any exceptions. So what we could do as a human, as this, is it's not a game. This is to make everyone understand it's not a game. And we're gonna convert. We're gonna make reliefs where bottoms and the identity of relationship between the ground and nature and means to it. It only feels like games. See, but the only way it works is if we're led by the plan of claiming everything denatured first. This is better than having to set up an industry and denature Earth to do it. Like things we had to do, like make highways. Before this was true, everywhere we're going to move, each identity, the location, area, and state. Each nation has a leadership, and then it has to tie to each location, area, and state. No, and sciences are identities that share this identity that is recorded, how maintained, self-valued, worse than obfuscated. All logic racketeering roles. And that is where we have to counter war also through their role, psychology rolls with this. See, that's where it's hard because that's how they've been hiding all their life aggressions. The nations with nuclear bombs and the ones trying to get it. They have to hide how they're, they have to self-value. Where and how all nations don't have any incredibility, but they have to pretend they are, or they get sanction troubles. Only counters to peace, not to crazy things. So that are only fathomable by people, not by accident, like having ready all kinds of nuclear weapons, bombs, but from a base recorded simultaneously self-value, tactically denatured, involved with the fact-cheating nature, torture, and slavery of each modern nation's founding parents. Even a pharaoh, how could they have free speech if state scenarios they lost conjunction to what the species revealed together? See, nations individually grouped and together are valued distinctly. The languages are also have an individual grouped and together identity of relationship to themselves. That is this identity's identity of relationship to itself, the identity of relativity. Allah's name was revealed to teach this, grouped, simultaneously valuing that and how there are more names for the identity of forever nature, individually grouped and together. This is a science that is about 5 bonded identities of value progression, and 3 bonded the Trinity simultaneously, distinctly, non-distinctly, and sequentially, which is how we could see it too. Through science, we could draw this. So each identity or volume has each other identity a part of it. Either the inherent nature of volume, the active nature of volume, and the progressive nature of volume of the complete identity that has those 3 semi-natures of volume of its complete identity forevers. Now, so this is where the ancients valued not agreeing about the name of forever as a scientific value, where you need to name it, and the relationships to what to the identity of the letters. Now, value G, letter / value G, is about where and how. Simultaneously, value of space is increasing while it is going out of itself, while it is being transferred into the value into and as the value of existence, and that is simultaneously the increased value of existence is being transferred out of it and keeping complete what is this identity, its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that to all parts of itself, distinctly, non-distinctly, and increasingly. And as everything increasing, so now this needs us to know the difference between hard and its identity of relationship to like in science, hard with bombs and stuff like that. That's an identity ground relationship to that can't defend that and value science that's using what is harder than the identity of forever because it's a substance that can't be broken. It's a value progression perfect. Unlike markets, each modern nation victim predator through blaming other things, others themselves, even when real, for real causes. This juxtaposed all to roles with all locations, areas, and states, everyone engineered and engineered with the manifest tied to that self-maintained self-value. We have the same people. We have the same. We have collusion. Even people that weren't even never even locations of crimes recorded in collusion with the crimes on those areas, on those kids, on and off campuses. On each age of fact, keeping nature sickly distinctly, simultaneously per the same method. Our course was his other humanity. So the whole humanity will come help, and this is what because we claim this is what everyone wants to do. So we have to train people how to speak. So this is what we have the means to do: make reveal positive out of negative. And afford free, even afford where it can make money means to counter the tactically nature relationship to nature and its identity of relationship to itself that can reveal evolution's fruits, means, and gifts from nowhere. Water is of course critical. Now that we have the time bomb already going off in the sea, where plastic has been breaking down into little particles so long. Now, even if you can't prove that scientifically, we're going to take such positions. Ulterior with gaming, we'll put juxtaposed with this, which means stack. We change the nature of everything at once. For example, people with State Department and stuff like that, they're getting brought into these conversations with networks that are involved with preventing mandated law with all the natures of courts. How they're motivated to it is recorded. They're victims, but they're victim predators. And they're involved with data, but then they need to hide it. So they need to hide from and hurt, which they've been doing with other. These are people that do this behind your back and in your face when they're pretending others recorded. We have all kinds of database racketeering, but it's way worse than that before that and after it. This is why you have to understand how from off campuses through time, there's been the roles with the child problems. Same ones involved with and as the elderly problems. Whole bunch of people, these are a whole bunch of people at the branch associated with both sides of Goodman Park and Hartford, associated further with forensics locations and with medical racketeering, foreign and domestic, roles with and uses of programs like DACA that help all everyone's victims. This invests everyone, even where it helped them, it hurt them. Even though DACA made a lot of money, I don't know if it's the same one on Nasdaq years ago. But I'm saying, see, these are market positions that are holding hostage free speech, and that they have maintained self-defended, self-valued, propagated a breach constitution, fake positive breaching roles, breaching screens, breaching tools, and worse than weapons. So we have to counter when opinions are having been lied to on a mass scale. You know, every time they have people speak, then they're going to defend that. Well, that's just, then they're quoting precedents that is criminally foreign influence. Social precedents, too. These are evidences. Now, see, we have debates on evidence, reception, integrity that are invested sequence racketeering roles, needs, natures. So the point is we have to have the sequence shifts. Down the road from the Harriet Beecher Stowe Mark Twain house. No, Harriet Beecher Stowe with the phrase Uncle Tom. Now I didn't even read the book yet. It's not important. What's more important is where that phrase was and is used in relationship to it to how this is about predicate acts treatments, where you have to make now a group. You have to attach it to a criminal entity, a racketeering group, to counter it. This engineered people worse than witch trials, blaming the real, having blame, valuing having blamed, and blaming the real cause of negative value nature, progression, action, nature, all the things others yourself. Like George Washington with slavery. That's why. George Washington did not want slavery. He said he wanted the surface values of the Constitution. People say, oh, they had slaves. He liberated them. He didn't even liberate himself. I mean, they together. But that's what I'm saying. They left us to gain free speech. Revolution is not a war. And revolution is not a criminal insidious nature forced criminally legalized self-value. That can't speak for identity. That can't defend itself, whereas how it's measured by other nations in relationship to sanctions and sanctions counterings, where we need peace in relationship to the identity, all that manifest and demonstration of the identity of negative value, nature, progression humanity is in, like nuclear weapons, like needs to entertain such simultaneously, while since the unveiling of, what are they called? Nuclear weapons, other kinds of crazy weapons, threats with chemicals, things like that. Needs for that. Since since before modern religions, semi-ancient, latter semi-ancient messengers. Thank God for them. It is greatly about what already took over, criminally foreign influenced the education of humanity. What we had enabled for us through this ancient republic's original relationship to the identity of the ground, all gather around. And to us, differentially into the value between that, which is further positive or negative, unceasingly onto 5 distinct identities of sequence nature simultaneously. And it is value as real science to discern that, because that's what causes evolution. What is going to be positive to the order, to and as the order of the sequence true, and to and as the order of, and as the value of the order of the finite. This is value's course, what pulls all things and pushes too. But what relieves? See, we don't have the Trinity discerned. Wherever nothing is binary, everything is forever nature, which is Trinity. which is an inherent active and which is an identity of three identities of volume that are bonded: inherent, active, and progressive. It is one identity, its identity of relationship to itself, and is the value of that. The possession of all things at once. Bach sings to Kempis dance with stolen name. Kempis Marcius calls us home to train, be trial tribes. So with this, this gaming system uses, there are people that want reliefs to positions, identity of the ground where and that now it's forsaken, but no one could, people are even reliant upon it. So he needs all kinds of natures of reliefs at once. To make this fathomable, we have to, where people are what you can't, so they built to be unfathomable. Well, we have to make fathomable. Higher than we need to go, though, is all we need under the ground. But we can only organize the means to do that, even not just even free, even gaining means to couple it with the rest of the elements of evolution's fruits and gifts, which is unceasingly tied to this identity of relativity and its identity of relationship to itself that brings the rest of its complete nature as value here when we have our identity as what is going to be and we're trying to be. We are that nature. So now these uses of counters of sequence of sanctions and counters to them are all sides in relationship to all kinds of things at once already, and there are hundreds of nations individually grouped together, all kinds of identities that are in the value nature position that defend that. So then when it comes to sanctions and with things that are really crazy like nuclear weapons and all that with hospitals and stuff like that can be connected in the intercampuses of each age and nature. Remember, propagated. Was that maintained? Styles of fact-cheating nature, racketeering natures, breaching screens and tools. CT is cherry tree. To fail, you fools. All find seed right there. Please read, prepare, boxings. So we have all these nations that are identities and our identities of counter to each other. But they're self-valuing that. Because what is fluent through our nations is this method where defenses of logic racketeering styles, of uses of identities originally instilled, interbranch, criminally foreign influence, positive treatments that are not real positive, time treatments used always too fast, too slow to get over on real quality fact treatment nature. That's so we have the branches already caught and knowing it, and so their methods are to keep lying and stacking things into databases. And so they need the problems progressed with areas. They need them further and further blamed on their victims who are acting as victim predators. Because there is basic logic that is not allowed. Freedom from uses of the physical delusions, of the criminally foreign influence premises treatment self-value. Whereas now people have to speak for really what is